I wasn't supposed to be home that Saturday. My flight back was booked for Sunday afternoon. But something about that last meeting in Vancouver felt too hollow, too forced, like I'd already mentally left the moment I stepped into that boardroom. So I changed my ticket, grabbed a cab from the airport, and walked into our quiet suburban house with the kind of expectation you have when you miss someone. I expected Olivia in yoga pants, humming around the kitchen, maybe a candle burning citrus and basil near the sink, like always. What I got was something entirely different. She was at the table with her back to me, hunched over her laptop with headphones dangling from one ear. But the second I walked through the door, she slammed the laptop shut like she'd been caught watching something dirty. I froze. She didn't even look up. Her hands disappeared into her bag, and her voice, strained and too light, floated out. "You're back early." "Yeah," I said, walking further in. "Meeting got canceled." There was a latte on the table, half finished, from some place called Linden Bean, not a cafe she ever went to. I'd remember the logo, a stylized pine cone stamped across the cardboard sleeve. It meant nothing by itself, but it didn't sit right. Something in me flinched. I stepped into the laundry room to toss my jacket in the hamper, and that's when I saw them. Boxers, not mine. Not the brand I've worn since college. Not even close. Different waistband, different cut, even a faint cologne scent on the cotton. I didn't say a word. I smiled and kissed her on the temple, like I always do. I asked how her day was. She said busy. I cooked that night while she disappeared upstairs. When she was in the shower, I grabbed her laptop from her bag. The browser history had been wiped clean, but she'd made one mistake. She didn't clear the cache. I recovered a hotel reservation under a last name I'd never seen before. Not mine, not her maiden name. A boutique hotel in Capitol Hill, Seattle. One we used to talk about visiting for our anniversary but never did. My hands started shaking, not out of anger, but clarity. That quiet, crystalline rage that doesn't scream, but hardens your breathing. The next morning, I did what anyone should never have to do. I signed up for a trial class at the gym she claimed to frequent every other day. She always said she liked going early before work, and there she was, in the arms of her personal trainer, laughing, pressed against him like some rom-com cliche. Her hands gripped his hoodie in a way I hadn't seen her touch me in months. I walked out before they saw me. Every step back to the car was slower than the last, like the muscles in my legs were trying to keep me from going home. But I wasn't done. At home, I opened a new digital wallet. I began siphoning off our shared savings. Nothing suspicious, just small transfers masked under investment portfolio tags. I made a new cloud drive titled Reality. In it, I dropped the hotel confirmation, screenshots of her messages I'd found using her backup password, and a photo I took at the gym from a distance. I changed every online banking login, revoked her access without a warning, then set the alarm code to a new sequence. I installed a second garage cam and had an extra key set duplicated, hidden inside a lockbox behind the doghouse. I didn't even feel like myself anymore. I was watching a man I barely recognized prepare for war. That night, I took her messenger logs from a forgotten browser session she left open once on our iPad. Her password was still saved. I dug in. The messages were there, clear as day. Conversations with someone listed as J, colleague. But no work talk. Just strings of late-night messages dripping with innuendo, hotel room numbers, jokes about me. I read them with a strange detachment, as if they belonged to someone else's life. I screenshotted everything, dated it, labeled it. Then I encrypted the folder and backed it up 3 different ways. I started sleeping with my phone in airplane mode, not because I didn't want to be reached, but because I wanted peace, control over which doors opened and when. The house felt cold, not physically, but like its core warmth had been sucked out and replaced by silence wrapped in betrayal. Olivia noticed nothing, or pretended not to. She was busy making smoothies in the morning, adjusting her necklace, checking her phone a little too often. But I could tell, beneath the surface, she knew something had changed. 3 days later, I tracked her car to the gym again, but this time she wasn't there. I drove around, checking nearby spots, and eventually found her car in the parking lot of a spa on 9th Street. She wasn't picking up steam towels. I parked 2 rows down and waited. 40 minutes later, she walked out with the same man from the gym. They were laughing. His hand grazed her back, too casual for a first-time tryst. I took a picture. Back home, I added a file to the folder. Seattle dinner receipt. Found it in her glove box when I was moving some groceries. A sleek black slip from a restaurant we'd once planned to try together. A table for two. Entrees I wouldn't have ordered. A dessert plate with 2 spoons. I could imagine it too clearly. Her smiling, her fingers grazing his over the table. That's when I felt it. Not anger or jealousy, but erasure. Like I'd been erased from her life in slow motion. That same night, after she fell asleep with her phone resting beside her pillow, I sat in the dark hallway and made my move. I connected to her signal using an exploit I found through a forgotten Bluetooth pairing. Her device unlocked with the same backup code I'd guessed for the Messenger app. This time, I was inside everything. Messages, notes, drafts. What I found was worse than confirmation. It was strategy. She was planning to leave. Not abruptly, but surgically. Like a patient cutting out dead flesh. There were notes between her and her mother about the new contract and getting everything lined up. There were memos about moving part of her funds into a clean account. Even a drafted message to me. Cold, rehearsed, emotionless, like a resignation letter. So I made a decision. I wouldn't confront her. Not yet. I'd bleed the trust from her world slowly, methodically, leaving no room for her to spin the truth. She wanted a new chapter. She'd get one, but not the one she expected. By Wednesday, the idea of sleep had become more theoretical than real. I operated on caffeine, adrenaline, and a sense of impending collision. She walked through the house like it was still hers, sipping protein shakes, watering the plants, humming in the bathroom, while the walls shifted behind her, one piece at a time. Everything she touched was still warm, but I was turning it all cold beneath the surface. She still didn't know I had access to her entire digital life, or that the photos I posted to our shared album from my work trip were taken by my assistant, while I moved silently from one city server to another, building a digital noose around her world. That morning, I created a fake identity on a freelance platform she sometimes browsed for creative collaborations. A professional alias, logo designer, clean profile, subtle references to Seattle, just enough to get noticed. Within hours, I saw his project listing, minimalist branding for wellness brand. Same name she'd mentioned in her messages. Same email domain he used in her chat threads. I submitted a proposal under the alias. Generic portfolio, polite tone. I got selected by the end of the day. He wanted quick turnaround. He suggested moving the discussion off platform to a private messenger. I agreed, and that's when I stepped into their private world. Not through Olivia, but through him. He sent over reference materials, photos of her, ironically, poses of her holding yoga mats, cropped just enough to look corporate but intimate to anyone who knew. He was building a personal brand around her. A reflection of calm, his words. I mirrored his tone, all business, no emotion. I scheduled our next chat for Friday night, when she told me she'd be going out with coworkers. While that played out, I ordered a technical scan of our shared tablet. We hadn't used it in months, but it still synced with her cloud account. I paid for deep recovery. The specialist extracted gigabytes of deleted correspondence, one chain in particular between her and her mother. The thread was worse than I expected. They were planning her exit like a corporate merger. Mentions of quietly liquidating, transferring assets under safe names, and waiting until after the contract closes. Her mother was in on it. They were going to leave me dry, sell the house, and claim it was amicable. I printed the thread, labeled it, and slid it into the reality folder. I had to move faster, so I tested her. I generated a fake request from our bank, a flagged transaction, 6 digits, routed through a dummy holding account. She approved it that same night through her mobile banking app. 10 minutes later, the transaction was halted and flagged by the compliance team. I knew the phone call would come in the morning, and I knew she'd panic. That was the point. She called me during lunch, voice tight. "Did you authorize something weird?" I kept it simple. "I don't know. Maybe one of the portfolio transfers?" She exhaled, pretending calm. "They're holding everything." I had to verify a bunch of stuff. I told them it might be related to the new business project. Hope it clears soon, I said. Then I hung up before she could ask questions. That same afternoon, I dropped by her office under the pretense of delivering a forgotten lunchbox. She wasn't there, but her assistant was. Sweet girl, always polite. You can leave it on her desk, she smiled. Her office was spotless, everything arranged with surgical precision. But she didn't account for me knowing exactly what drawer held the external drive where she kept backups. I copied the contents to my flash drive and walked out without leaving a trace. Back home, I filed an anonymous complaint through a government portal, the kind reserved for corporate misconduct. I listed her unexplained consulting income, her sudden asset shifts, and included attachments of edited documents from her accounting folder. Enough red flags to trigger a background audit. I didn't need them to launch anything massive. I just needed tension. 2 days later, I received confirmation that the complaint had been assigned a case number. She posted a new photo to her verified social account. A soft, candid shot of her on a rooftop, hair lifted by the wind, that same synthetic smile she used for branding. I saved the photo, ran it through editing software, and placed it beside a cropped shot of her and her lover from the hotel's security cam. The pose, the frame, the lighting, it was too perfect to ignore. I stitched both into a single layout, turned the tones black and white, added a grain filter, and posted it anonymously on a creative artboard. Captioned, Dualities. I made sure the location tags were abstract, but the people who needed to recognize her did. One of her colleagues commented a fire emoji. Another said, "Bold take, Liv." The next day, her partner in the wellness project quietly suspended their contract. No announcement, just a terse email, exploring different creative directions. She threw a glass in the sink when she got home. I heard it from upstairs. I sat in my office and opened her verification inbox. An email sat unread from the social media platform, an alert about a possible impersonation report. I smiled. It had worked. Her blue check mark vanished the next morning. She asked me at breakfast, "Hey, have you noticed anything weird with my accounts?" I didn't look up from my coffee. Nope. She stayed silent the rest of the day. That night, I printed one of her old journal entries, the one she used to scribble into when we were still building our life. The page had a line I never forgot. Loyalty is just discipline with a soft edge. I copied it in calligraphy and left it on her desk beside a stack of shredded mail. Then I sent a letter through my lawyer, a draft for a prenuptial addendum. It declared her share of the remaining assets to be zero. She didn't say a word for 2 days. She didn't sign it either, but she stopped sleeping in our bed. I moved into the guest room, pretending to make space. But truthfully, I needed separation, physical, psychological. Each morning I woke up alone, surrounded by papers, photos, screenshots, account logs. I wasn't just building a case, I was constructing a perfect timeline. The day after she refused to sign the addendum, I activated the next phase. I ordered a background scan on her lover. Deep search, legal record scrape, corporate ties, offshore flags. What I found wasn't explosive, but enough to complicate his professional world, enough to make his name radioactive in small business circles. And I wasn't even close to finished. She still hadn't noticed the extra camera in the garage. By the start of the third week, everything in the house felt like theater. Props, shadows, performances. Olivia moved through our kitchen like a woman rehearsing lines she no longer remembered the meaning of. Her smiles were late, her voice unsure, and the cracks were finally beginning to show. She was shrinking by the hour, and I didn't even have to raise my voice. Just pressure. Quiet, constant pressure. The audit notice arrived at her office on Tuesday morning. I knew because the same accountant who used to handle our joint returns sent me a heads up. Off the record, Mike, but someone's going to start asking about her secondary income streams. She called me from her car 20 minutes later, her tone clipped and falsely calm. "Do you know anything about this?" I made a show of being surprised. "Audit? For what?" "I don't know," she said quickly. "Some flagged income. They said it might be random." "You think it's random?" "I don't know," she snapped, then fell silent. "I'll handle it." I said nothing. I let the silence hang until she ended the call. That same afternoon, I met with a private auditor I'd hired independently, a friend of a friend who specialized in tracing hidden assets. We dug into a property held in the name of her cousin, a modest house near Bainbridge, cozy, overlooking the water. She had always mentioned it as a family place, but the title history didn't lie. The deed was transferred 6 months ago, quietly, under a trust that traced back to a company registered to her lover, and Olivia. They co-owned it, bought in cash, registered through a shell corporation. I took a breath and leaned back in my seat. The kind of breath you take when your brain begins to realize how deep the betrayal really runs. Not a fling, not an accident, a life built without me, behind my back. We arranged a court filing under suspicion of concealed marital assets and money laundering. The case would be slow-moving, but it planted legal landmines under every dollar she touched. By the end of the week, a review panel was assigned. Her name flagged in the financial registry. I wasn't done. Through a journalist friend, I posed as a buyer for the Bainbridge property. They arranged a showing. The photos came to my inbox at midnight. Clean, polished, staged. But in the room clearly meant to be a child's, I saw something that stopped my heart cold. A framed photo of our daughter, sitting on the windowsill. I copied the photo and added it to the legal file, marked under psychological manipulation of minor. My attorney nearly choked when he saw it. "This isn't just unethical," he muttered. "This is nuclear-grade material." The next morning, I forwarded the file to the court-appointed guardian overseeing our custody review. 3 days later, Olivia's corporate laptop mysteriously disappeared from her office. She made the mistake of blaming a T, then her boss. I already knew where it went. I had it, passed anonymously to an internal auditor I'd hired weeks earlier. The laptop was a digital graveyard. Copies of encrypted chats, shadow billing software, side contracts all tying back to her wellness brand. The paper trail pointed to 2 consulting gigs she'd never declared. One of them funneled funds into an offshore holding account under her daughter's name. It wasn't hard to set up a meeting. Her parents were visiting for the weekend, planned weeks earlier, a family dinner. I made the arrangements, set the table, poured the wine. Then halfway through a forgettable casserole, I got up and retrieved a single file from my office. Just one. I placed it on the table between us, a printed log of the transfer from our daughter's account to an offshore LLC, registered to a man none of them had ever met. Olivia stared at it. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. Her mother picked up the file, read one page, and quietly stood up. Her father followed without a word. They walked out of the house. They didn't take their jackets. They didn't say goodbye. Olivia stayed at the table, eyes locked on nothing. The next day, my attorney filed for full custody. She tried to retaliate, hired a lawyer, scraped together what she could from the accounts she thought were safe. But everything was already tied up in reviews. Her finances were frozen. Her brand contracts were dissolving one by one. She stood on quicksand and hadn't even realized it until her toes were already buried. I packed her things. Every article of clothing, every keepsake, jewelry boxes, perfume bottles, photo albums, even the canvas tote she used for weekend market runs. I labeled each box with clean, neutral handwriting. Then I delivered them to her sister's apartment in Capitol Hill. Left them neatly stacked outside the door. Took a photo for proof and drove away. I didn't leave a note. I didn't need to. Only one document remained behind. I taped it to the fridge. An official motion, pre-approved and ready for signature. A voluntary relinquishment of parental rights. No lawyer, no emotion, just a legal fork in the road. She didn't call. She didn't show up that night. 2 days later, I received a single email. Short, terse. "This isn't over." I replied with a blank message and attached the image of our daughter's photo on the Bainbridge property windowsill. I never got a response. The last thread I pulled was on her lover. Quietly, I submitted a complaint to his licensing board. Not public, just a private inquiry into business conduct and asset origins. Enough to trigger a background ethics check. He lost his corporate client the next morning. The company posted a vague announcement about internal restructuring. His professional name faded from the freelance listings within a week. I had one last thing to do. I sat down with our daughter and explained, in clean, unshaken words, that Mom would be moving out for a while, that things between adults sometimes change, but that love, the real kind, doesn't vanish just because people lie. She asked, "Did she lie to you?" I nodded. She asked, "Did you lie to her?" "No," I said, "not once." She stared at me, then leaned into my chest and said, "Good." That night I lit a fire in the backyard. Nothing dramatic, just a small, slow burn. I fed in the last paper receipt from Seattle, the linen napkin she kept in her glove box, and a cheap bracelet I found in her gym bag. Then I went inside and turned off the house alarm. I slept without locking the door. The courthouse felt colder than the season allowed. Everyone said spring was coming, but that morning the sky hung low and gray like it hadn't moved all night. I arrived early, suited in dark navy, crisp collar, no tie. Under my arm, a slim black box, matte, fingerprint proof. Inside it sat the device she carried for months, never suspecting. The GPS tracker I planted in her gym bag weeks ago slipped between the lining and the foam base. I'd logged every movement, every trip to that house, every circle around court-adjacent hotels, every stop that didn't match her story. The data painted a trail she could never walk back. I'd waited to reveal it, waited until it mattered most. Court convened at 9 a.m. Olivia sat across from me, eyes hollowed out, lips drawn tight. Her lawyer, a newer hire, looked nervous. Mine did not. The judge reviewed our filings slowly. Then the evidence file. Cloud logs, hotel photos, audio transcripts, the silent click of a hidden mic. Then the GPS data, time-stamped routes, tied to messages she never deleted from her secondary device. There was no performance from her, no tears, no apologies, just exhaustion. The kind that sets in when the last lie stops working and the echo chamber collapses. The court ruled for full custody, sole authority for all decisions. She lost claim to the house, and her share of the property was seized pending financial investigation. The judge didn't shout, just signed, scribbled his name over her story like it was just another document. And it was. She looked over once. I didn't look back. After the hearing, I didn't return home. I walked straight to the parking garage, started the engine, and drove north without speaking a word. 4 hours later, I reached the outskirts of Portland. A small house sat nestled against a wooded rise. Nothing fancy, just space, silence, and trees that didn't ask questions. I rented the attic, cleaned it up, built it out with soft lights and pine flooring, set up a studio desk, a camp cot for my daughter when she visits, and 3 crates of old records I hadn't listened to since college. The only decoration was a corkboard marked reality. No photos, just the word printed in gray on white. A month passed, then 2. Her wellness brand quietly folded. No public statement. Just another website that stopped loading one morning. Her social accounts vanished not long after. No friends posted about it. No one seemed to notice. I auctioned off the last of her branded materials under a seller name she wouldn't recognize. Packaging, mock-ups, digital rights. Her face erased, rebranded, resold. I never touched the money, just had it rerouted to the legal fund for custody expenses. That summer, I bought a small boat. My daughter and I sailed the Oregon coastline. Slow, methodical, free. Just us, a cooler full of peanut butter sandwiches, and salt-drenched air, thick with peace. I didn't take many photos, but the ones I did I stored in a private archive. No captions, just moments. Then 2 months later, the text came. A new number. No name. "I just want to talk. Please." I stared at the screen for a long time. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I didn't care what she wanted anymore. I replied with a single sentence. "I wasn't your enemy. You were." She didn't respond. A week later, I mailed something to her old address. No return label. Just an envelope sealed in wax. Inside, a printed screenshot of the message she once sent by mistake. The one meant for her lover, but sent to me instead. A cruel little accident. One that triggered everything. I didn't sign the letter. No vengeance. No gloating. Just a memory returned to sender. She would carry the silence. That was enough. I never went back to the city, never logged into our old accounts, never said her name out loud again. I didn't need to. Everything worth saving had come with me. Everything else was left behind like charred debris after a quiet fire. The truth didn't need to scream. It just had to stand still, while everything else collapsed around it. That's all for now, folks. Thank you for being with me today and listened. And if you liked my story, please subscribe, hit the like button, and comment below what you think about all this, and what would you do if you were me. Also, don't forget to check my other stories in description below.